Hello, you're watching news from Kazakhstan. It is Friday, September 28th, and I'm Nurbek Savitakhunov. Mass resignations at Channel Almaty. More than 50 employees signed resignation letters due to issues related to national and internal politics. Reporters claim the editorial board is being pressured by the city administration.
During the leadership of Serik Sarabayev, the Almaty TV channel used to raise social issues and leading topics of the day. For example, the channel used to talk about Zhanaozen, Kazalagash tragedy, the emergency situation at Arkan-Kirgen-Boro outpost, the issues of terrorism and religion. I think our topics and media policy of our channel were not much welcomed by the press secretary of Almaty, Mayor Sergei Kuyanov. We received multiple warnings from him, and our work has been censored by him. He has been interfering in our job and creative process that entails the work of journalists, and that's why we all decided to quit. A dispute over a story related to the recent statement of the politician Petr Svoik on language issue in the country became the last straw. The author of the story wrote an objection to politician's statement, and the reaction of the officials was not long in coming. According to the journalist, the head of the press office of City Hall demanded an explanation from the journalist. The editor was outraged by such intervention. As a result, the dispute ended with the dismissal of the inappeasable editor and then the mass exodus of staff. It is my jurisdiction to influence on the media policy of state TV channel, isn't it? You should ask them why they are quitting. The new news editor Bayzak Asalbekov has been in the position only 3 weeks and haven't learned all nuances of his job yet. He hasn't seen and signed any resignation letters of his staff. According to him, the complainants have no grounds for discontent. As far as I know, all of us, including me, were doing what we were assigned to do. Just like any other channel, we have our own media policy, and I believe that we are working just fine. I personally don't have any complaints against anyone.
Former Atarau Mayor Askar Kerimov was arrested after all. The regional court issued a 2-month arrest warrant on Thursday. Court officials emphasized the arrest is in connection with the criminal case over embezzlement of budget funds, which was initiated immediately after Governor Birger Skaliyev's dismissal.
The Prosecutor's General Office spread the information on embezzlement of the budget funds. These funds were allocated to 100 hospitals and 100 schools, but were not used as intended. Investigation on these is ongoing. Kerimov is accused of abuse of power and embezzlement of the state funds in accordance with Article 307 of the Criminal Code. Similar accusations were used when the criminal case was brought against a number of officials in Atarau.
Most ministers remained in their seats after the reshuffle, but there is no reason to rest assured. Such was the statement made by the newly appointed Prime Minister Serik Akhmetov on Thursday.
Most of the cabinet ministers retained their positions, but this isn't a reason for complacency, but rather a signal to be more proactive. And we need to actively implement the assignments of the head of state. At the first meeting of the cabinet, the newly appointed prime minister assured that he and his team will ensure the continuity and the use of experience gained by the previous governments. Akhmetov's cabinet will also continue the partnership with the parliament, especially with ruling party's fraction. One of the first tasks that Akhmetov gave to the ministers is to counteract the imminent financial fever. He reassured that the detailed anti-crisis plan is on place and that even the growth of economy is possible in this difficult period. Serik Akhmetov specifically mentioned the latest presidential orders and, as usual, asked colleagues to live up to his expectations and trust.
Ambassador of Kazakhstan to the United States, Yerlan Idrisov, was appointed the new foreign minister. He used to be formally signed in today in the last government appointment this year. Presidential advisor Yermohamed Yirtizbayev spoke to reporters regarding the latest news.
To the best of my knowledge, Yerlan Idrisov will be appointed the Minister of Foreign Affairs. He's on his way now, and tomorrow he will be presented as a new minister. And Yerzhan Kazhakhanov is coming back to the post of President's assistant, and he will work closely with the head of state. According to the political advisor, the cabinet is now formed and there will be no new appointments until the new year, and the majority of the ministers retained their posts in order to implement the budget in the remaining 3 months. Yermohamed Yirtizbayev also commented on the process related to Zhanaozen events. He spoke of why the ex-governor of Zhanaozen, Arak Sarbapeyev, was first acquitted and then sentenced to 10 years. According to his information, there was a scandal with the jury. After the acquittal, they came to Sarbapeyev for dinner. Once the prosecutor learned of this, he appealed against the court's decision. As for the leader of Alga Party, Vladimir Kozlov, whose hearing is ongoing, Yirtizbayev says that he isn't Sarbapeyev, he didn't steal the funds and wasn't on the square in Zhanaozen on December 16. However, as the advisor said, he was connected to the events there. If it was up to me to take a decision, it is absolutely clear to me that he has connection to inciting the national discord, but 9 years sentence is too severe and hard, in my opinion. I don't know, perhaps 5 or 4 years of the conditional sentence is already quite a severe punishment.
Vladimir Kozlov's last word is in its third day in Aktau. As customary, he is taking his time with every item of the charges against him. Vladimir Kozlov names Article 164, which the prosecution wants to sentence him under, political activism copied from the totalitarian system of the past. The opposition leader contends the investigation was initially set not on fighting the truth, but in fulfilling its objective.
The politician maintains that there is not a single document against him. According to Kozlov, anyone who doesn't share Akurta's optimism can be jailed, and why wasting time on long investigations if the opposition's activity is by definition considered as criminal? Having studied the prosecutor's charges, Kozlov concluded that most of the materials that contradict the investigation's verdict are intentionally not included in the case materials. Analyzing every charge, he provides arguments that disproves them. He thinks that in Zhanaozen authorities just imitate the resolution of the labor conflict, but if they really started to solve workers' issues, the tragedy could have been avoided. There are parts of the bill of particulars that speak of the independent media. Vladimir Kozlov responds by saying that the truthful depiction of the events in the country cannot be classified as undermining the authority of the country. The events themselves are marring the country's image. I have every reason not to trust the conclusions of the expertise. Any simple math will prove that experts would not be able to conduct a large amount of work in such a short period of time. Experts would need 7 months, but they claim that it was done in 3 months. Thus, I doubt the conclusions of experts who claim that there are extremism traces. Several hundred newspapers were examined, several dozens of transcripts, as well as 1,411 hours of KplusTV channel materials. Moreover, these materials were not provided to me so that I could use them in my defense. This one again proves the inequality of the sides in this process.
Meanwhile, observers speak out about the inequality of the two parties in the trial. Due to the authorities' information blockade, not many know about the trial in Aktau. Islamo Anasanov, Mangistar Regional Alha Party activist, complains that news about Kozlov, Saparkali and Aminov reaches the people with gross delays and when it loses its currency.
The activist says that the activities of the party were in no way different from the activities of the president's Nurotan party. Furthermore, he is certain that Alha is a political unit with rather creative plans, and now the entire power of the government machine is used to eliminate the dissenters. Islam sadly notes that we are going back to the past, to the year of 1937. This is absurd. Those people are totally dependent, and they will interpret it in their own ways. They will be discrediting the party and its leader. It cannot be compared to any criminal activities. If we use common sense, although as an observer I have long understood that we have discarded common sense and legal morals long ago. We are slowly going back to the year of 1937.
The high-profile trial, along with the situation surrounding Respublika newspaper, were at the center of attention in the annual OSCE Human Dimension meeting. Kazakh journalist and activist returned back home and spoke about the event's main message. In order to protect the country's national security, the government must uphold democratic values and human rights. However, the Republic is sadly among those that do not follow that in practice.
Well-known journalist and human rights activist Evgeny Zhovtis says that Kazakh authorities practice a new approach in dealing with NGOs and media. Experts came to this conclusion after participating in the meetings with UN in Geneva, European Parliament in Brussels, and the annual meeting of OSCE in Warsaw, where the current situation with human rights and freedom in Kazakhstan was discussed. One of the negative examples reviewed was the infamous story with the strike of the oil workers and the trials of its participants and political activists that followed. The OSCE representatives admitted that last year they listened to the report of politician Vladimir Kozlov about the extended labor dispute, and then this year the same report became a basis for his indictment. The Kazakh official delegation met such remarks with acute criticism. Anything NGOs, human rights activists, or journalists try to say is immediately met aggressively with response that we're either telling fairy tales or that we're just wrong. Every single statement is met with a counter-statement that is mostly accusing us personally or organizations we represent. Editor of Respublika newspaper Tatyana Trubacheva has just returned from Warsaw. She also had to listen to the speeches of the official delegates from Kazakhstan about the democratic process in the country. In response, the editor reminded that no printing press in the country would print her newspaper for 3 years in a row. One of the journalists, Alla Zlobina, is called for questioning, and her colleague, the editor-in-chief of Vzglad newspaper, Igor Vinyavsky, spent few months under arrest. Trubacheva herself, along with her colleagues, are under the close watch of the law enforcement officials. We are part of these criminal investigations. Our printed materials underwent expertise, but we are not informed of anything, and from the start we were deprived of the right to defend our cause. If only we knew the questions, we would protest against them, request for clarifications, but we do not have this opportunity. Tatiana Trubachova and Evgeny Zhovtis speak of the new trend when only the representatives of state-created NGOs are sent to the meetings of the human rights activists and European parliamentarians abroad. And while these representatives are trying to improve the positive image of the country abroad, the pressure on those who voice alternative opinions is mounting inside the country.
A demonstration in support of Vladimir Kozlov, Serik Sapargali, and Akshanat Aminov was held in Warsaw earlier. Civil activists from Kazakhstan, Belgium, Belarus, and Russia unfolded their banners in front of the building where the OSCE Human Dimension Conference is underway.
Evgeny Zhovtis, a renowned human rights activist in Kazakhstan, came to the protest action. It is worth noting that a year ago Vladimir Kozlov stood right here in the same spot, holding a poster reading "Free Zhovtis." At that time, representatives of the Alga party pending registration, human rights activist Vadim Kuramshin, and activist Galym Agileov, and chief editor of Vzglyad Igor Vinyavsky were among the participants of the rally. The protest caught the attention of the police, however the law enforcement officers just drove by without stopping. One doesn't need to get a special permission from the authorities in order to hold a protest action in Poland. I was present at the trial and I had the chance to see that the case was built on assumptions like someone heard something from somebody. I believe this is a political order and I demand that Kozlov be freed in the courtroom.
In cultural news, the Aron Atabek Prize is established while the poet is serving time in prison after the unrest in Shanrak microdistrict in Almaty, when a police officer died in the clashes with local residents. The prize is created at the initiative of Bolat Atabayev and will be awarded to artists.
There are only 4 nominations presented in the areas of figurative arts, musical and literature works, creating photo, video and film images, as well as theatrical performances. Special attention will be paid to the civil position of the award winners. Jaina Aydarkhan, the wife of Aron Atabek, hopes that the award will turn the public eye to her husband's artwork.
No gas, no bread. Bakeries are shut down for the second day in Atyrau. Deliveries of bread to stores was discontinued due to planned maintenance at the main gas pipeline.
The price of bread is skyrocketed in the stores which still have it on the shelves. If before a loaf of bread was sold for 27 to 30 cents, now the stores charge 47 or even 67 cents for a loaf. According to the plan, the left bank of the city will remain without natural gas until September 29th and the right bank until October 1st. There are about 30 bakeries in Karaganda city and most of them run on gas. The local authorities are trying to resolve the issue with the undersupply of bread. We spoke with regional department on gas supply and they promised to turn on the gas supply for the left bank. There are 13 bakeries in the area and the heads of which were gathered by the mayor who ordered them to work on full capacity. They will produce 60,000 loaves of bread. The expected level of gas supply will cover 60% of demand for bread and the rest of the demand will be satisfied by the exported bread from Uralsk. The agreement with the local supermarkets has been already reached on bread supply from West Kazakhstan region and the authorities promise that price for a loaf of bread will remain 27 to 30 cents. Moreover, the stores are committing themselves to hold the prices on the previous level to the detriment of their own businesses and they also promise to punish those who raise the price of bread. You can't imagine what kind of nightmare we had here. People fought with each other. We had no bread and there was a long line of people who stood here from the morning.
In related news, Kazakh farmers have once again addressed their grievances to the president and government. In an open letter to the leaders, they asked for assistance in connection with the loss of harvest due to complicated weather conditions. Moreover, agrarians protest their ministry's plan to raise the land tax. The Agriculture Ministry's reaction is covered in the next report.
Farmers are demanding that the agrarian emergency is declared in the country. Today, at the meeting of the Union of Agrarians, they mentioned that over 1.5 million hectares of the areas under crops are lost. In the neighboring regions of Russia, the authorities already declared an emergency and paid compensation to the farmers equaling $50 per hectare, while in Kazakhstan, the subsidy is only $4 for the hectare of the lost crops. At the same time, the Ministry of Agriculture is planning to raise the land tax 5 or even tenfold. Farmers are blaming large agricultural holdings and grain-producing companies and lobbying and warn that the increased rates of the land tax will finish the middle-sized agribusinesses. Authorities respond by saying that the taxes are being increased to ensure the more effective use of land.
Это не очень непростой вопрос. Раздать легко, забрать.
This is a very complex issue. It is easy to give the land away, but when you try to take it back, it is accompanied by fighting, politics and screaming. We know that there are problems, especially in Almaty region, where this problem is most painful. You know that the issue has been discussed at the highest level.
Вы знаете, что она на самом высоком уровне поднимается.
Farmers also spoke of the ministry's policy of increasing the livestock population and noted that it is inefficient to purchase the pedigree livestock abroad. Instead of such PR actions, it would be better to support the domestic producers.
Не обязательно закупать. Лучше нам дайте эти деньги.
There's no need to purchase the livestock there, better to distribute the funds among us, give the money to farmers. This isn't the way the government should take, to procure the cattle, show it on TV, and what next?
Показать по телевизору, а дальше что?
The head of the Ministry of Agriculture recently was reprimanded because of the same cattle issue when the parliamentarians asked him why over his term as a minister the state of the agriculture is getting down steadily. Kazakhstan was to export 60,000 tons of meat per year, but in 2011 this figure reached only 600 tons, and in the first 6 months of 2012 even less, 190. Trying to justify himself, the minister delved deeply into the biology and told them that the cow's pregnancy period is 9 months and another 18 months are needed for the calf to reach maturity, and that the breeding of the pedigree cattle is an esoteric and dark process.
Племенные быки шли под нож, сейчас они идут на расхват.
The pedigree bulls used to be slaughtered and now they sell it like hotcakes, but you can see the results now. They normally do it at night before dawn, but soon we will see the results.
Под утро. Скоро это результат будет виден.
After such merciless criticism, experts thought that the dismissal of the minister was imminent. However, Asoljan Mamutbekov retained his chair as a member of the Serik Akhmetov's cabinet.
Akjol party leader Azat Piruashov was personally invited to visit Korday border checkpoint to see firsthand how customs operate. The invitation came from the deputy chairman of the committee after Piruashov's criticism of the checkpoint's employees.
Мы бы хотели тоже пригласить господина Пируашева, потому что...
We would also like to invite Mr. Piruashev. We appreciate any opinion on Korday checkpoint, that of the opposition party. We would like to have Mr. Piruashev be a bit more impartial.
Чтобы господин Пируашев более объективно, значит, к событиям относился.
To recall, during the plenary session, the head of Akjol party criticized the work of customs officers. He said that the citizens of Kazakhstan are subjected to humiliation and extortion at Korday checkpoint on the border with Kyrgyzstan. The MP named corruption as the reason for all this. Deputy head of Customs Committee Igor Ten was answering the MP's every question. He assured that none of the above is true. The work of the border outpost is under online surveillance round the clock.
In other news, the Military Prosecution Office finally announced results of the DNA expertise of the remains found at the Arkan-Kirgan border outpost. German specialists were able to identify the remains of only one border guard, Rustem Akalbayev. According to doctors of the Charité clinic in Berlin, they were unable to obtain DNA from the remains of Denis Rey and Meirkhan Imenov, thus rendering doctors unable to confirm their death.
On Thursday at 10 a.m., the relatives of 3 bodyguards, Rustem Akalbayev, Denis Rey and Meirkhan Imenov, came to the military prosecutor's office. The journalists were not allowed to speak to them. The chairman of the Soldiers' Mothers Committee was not allowed to be present at the meeting either. Lyudmila Kostenko believes that there are many inconsistencies in the case and the expert review results are questionable. I've already told the parents that we cannot believe the results of the expert review. They provided us with a copy of the expert review and we never got to see the original document. We cannot even appeal against it. Firstly, we need to demand the original document to be presented to us and then make our demands through the court. The mass media didn't wait to see the border guards' relatives leave the building. The journalists can only guess that they were shown out of the building through the staff entrance. The officials of the supervision body didn't announce the results immediately. It wasn't until after lunch, after 4 hours of waiting, that the press secretary of the military prosecutor's office came out to speak to the journalists. Akbar Abdildin was rather brief.
The
Institute of Forensic Medicine Charité in Berlin conducted a molecular genetic examination. According to its results, the body remains of Akalbekov Rustem were identified. The German experts were not able to identify the rest of the DNA cells. The investigation is still underway. The press secretary of the chief military prosecutor said that it was impossible to get the DNA results from the remaining bodies due to the severity of the burns. The rest of the questions addressed to Akbar Abdildin were answered with a standard phrase: the investigation is still underway. He noted that the investigation period was extended up to September 30th. Meanwhile, the relatives of the bodyguards are skeptical of the expert examination results. Tatiana Rey said in one of her interviews to the website that they have been offered to take the unidentified remains. Neither she nor Imenov Meirkhan's father accepted them. They doubt out that the remains belong to their children. To recap, in early July, during their trip to Arkankergen, the relatives of the two murdered border guards were also doubtful of the expert examination results. The skull is the most heat-resistant part of the human body. It takes 2 days for it to burn down in a crematory. A specific temperature is needed for it to burn to ashes, and we never got to see the skull. We have the jaw and teeth fragments and the crown works, but our child never had crown works. Meanwhile, the information regarding the expert examination results is the most discussed topic in Kaznet. The users openly say that the results are inconsistent, and that is the reason why it took so long to get an expert review. To recap, investigation authorities promised to voice the initial results in early July. Some information web portals even proposed a version that the two of the burned bodies belong to women or even to dogs.
The entire staff of the Internal Affairs Ministry is deployed to search for the suspects in the mass murder at Ilialatau National Park, informs the agency. The ministry urges the people to provide any information on the location of Sayan Khairov, 37-year-old resident of West Kazakhstan region, and 34-year-old Zaurbek Batabayev, resident of Jambul region. The investigation is confident that both men are followers of a radical Islamic movement.
As a result of the work done, the investigation now has solid grounds to assert that these crimes were committed by a gang of religious extremists, all members of which have been identified. According to the press release, it is also reported that the suspects were changing their place of residence by means of renting the premises. They were renting a house in Tausamal village of Almaty region. In July, there was an explosion. According to the MIA, Khairo and Batabayev have lived in the village of Bagashil, where most of the gang was terminated during the special operation.
The number of religious unions in Kazakhstan decreased threefold. At the moment, there are around 3,000 of them, as opposed to 4,500 that existed before re-registration. This information was provided on Thursday during a plenary session by the head of Religious Affairs Agency, Kairat Lama Sharif.
Verification activities of religious associations began after the adoption of the new amendments in the country, restricting the rules of registration. The developers have introduced a mandatory procedure of examination activities of these organizations, the legal restrictions on the number of members, and other restrictive measures. Re-registration procedure for religious groups will be finished on October 25th, but it is already evident that their number will be decreased. Thus, there will be only 9 Lutheran churches instead of 32 pre-existing ones, while the Baptist associations is going to be decreased by 60%. According to the chief religion expert of the country, many organizations have only existed on papers. Besides, there are other reasons for denying their re-registration, which Lama Sharif wasn't willing to disclose. He assured that no particular violations have been identified and they are in no way connected with the participation in the increased facts of extremism and terrorism. Some remote villages have mosques without imams and religious servants, so the spiritual administration of Muslims of Kazakhstan decided not to register them as separate subsidiaries. They will be used as prayer rooms and composite space.
A grandiose world bike voyage in support of Expo 2017 will start on October 1st in Astana. The well-known biker Dmitry Petrukhin and 2 of his assistants will travel around 35 countries with advertising materials. The first stops are Cuba and the entire Caribbean.
A large number of members of Expo Bureau are located exactly on this route. Every vote will count, where for 2 months they will start choosing between 2 contenders, Kazakhstan and Belgium, to host International Exposition 2017. Dmitry Petrukhin will continue his World Bike Tour right after Kazakhstan wins the title of the host. The tour is planned to finish in the summer of 2013. Meanwhile, the bikers are looking forward to a 9-month-long trip. The trip is sponsored by the Ministry of Economic Development, which already allocated $13,000 the first 2 months of the trip. The 56-year-old traveler around the globe is showing both physical and mental readiness. In reply to a joke question, could the long trip on the bike affect the man's health? He said everything is fine, which could be taken for. I have enough stamina to attract guests to Kazakhstan. We are planning to attract over 5 or even 10 million guests, since we still have plenty of time to create good PR around this event.
Residents and guests of Almaty will be able to visit the reconstructed high mountain skating rink in Medeo within the week. The opening of the winter season will be held there on October 5th. Entrance fees this year will be a bit increased. However, the leadership of Medeo is holding out hope for high attendance. More details in the next and final report.
Welcome to Medeo. Repair works on Medeo High Mountain Rink have been finally completed. Over $60 million were spent during the 3 years of reconstruction. The ice quality has been improved, complying with the modern technology, and therefore the leadership of the complex now hopes that visitors will have nothing to complain about. The final brush-up will be over before October 5th. The recreation will be available from Thursday to Sunday. However, the price went up from $2.10 to $3.20 per hour on ice, while the prices for skate rentals stayed the same, $6.70 for 2 hours. The first ones to test the quality of ice this year will be the Kazakhstan team of speed skating. I believe this season will go down in the history of this complex as a final. Previously, even at the Asian Games, the World Cup, we have been constantly testing our installations, and this year our valiant construction workers have finally finished all these installations and commissioning all of the equipment. So we will no longer have it in the test mode. Instead, it will be fully operational. Reconstruction of Medeo coincided with a number of natural emergencies. One of the latest was the fire on Makhnatka mountain in August. 5 helicopters and 700 people were involved in firefighting operations. The fire burned around 80 acres of forest and caused well over $2.5 million of damage. The emergency also destroyed avalanche retaining structure. Medeo administration assures the environmentalists and the public that the complex is built out on concrete and therefore it must withstand any disaster. It will take the impact strength of tsunami similar to one in Fukushima, but it's not going to happen. In other words, the walls of the arena itself will be the obstacle. New hopes are imposed for the new symbol of Almaty. City administration have already applied for the World Championship in speed skating among men in 2014.
This is all we have time for now. Thank you for watching. See you tomorrow.